complex defense system of the body so quickly and so effectively. Let's take a look at what Ebola does. Ebola is a virus. A virus is a very small thing. A bit of RNA or DNA and a few proteins in a hull. It has no ability to do anything by itself whatsoever and can only survive and proliferate by infecting cells. To avoid this, we have the immune system. The immune system is super complex, so we developed a visual system that makes it easy to understand. So it looks like this. Let's concentrate on the part that's critical to understanding Ebola and ignore the rest. So, usually, dendritic cells would activate an army of antivirus cells, support cells and antibody factories that would, together with the guard cells, wipe out the infection in a matter of days. But when Ebola strikes, it directly attacks the immune system. Some of the first cells it takes over are the dendritic cells, the brains of the immune system. The Ebola virus enters a dendritic cell by binding onto receptors for cell transport. Once it's inside, it dissolves its outer hull and releases its genetic material, nuclear proteins and enzymes. In a nutshell, it takes over the cell, disables the cell's protective mechanisms and reprograms it. The cell now becomes a virus production machine and uses its resources to build Ebola viruses. Once the cell is saturated, it dissolves the cell membrane and millions of viruses are released into the tissue. The virus not only prevents the dendritic cell from activating the specialized antivirus forces, it manipulates it into sending signal proteins that trick the specialized cells into ending their own lives prematurely. So the immune system is seriously disrupted and unable to react, while the virus rapidly multiplies. We're talking billions. There are cells that should deal with infected cells, the natural killer cells. But they also get infected and just die before they can prevent the disease from spreading. At the same time, Ebola infects the guard cells of the body, macrophages and monocytes. Not only managing to circumvent their defenses, it also manipulates them to signal to the cells that make up the blood vessels, telling them to release fluids into the body. Usually this makes sense, but in this case, it just causes mayhem. All over the body, neutrophils are activated, awoken by the virus and the macrophages' signals. They're not very effective against viruses and should not be involved in this fight and begin to do lots of stuff they shouldn't do. The neutrophils signal the blood vessels to release more fluid, causing internal bleeding. Another area of the body Ebola attacks is the liver. The virus finds it very easy to enter the liver and it quickly starts killing loads of liver cells and causing organ failure and more internal bleeding. And all of those things are going on at the same time. As the virus spreads, it's like nukes exploding everywhere. One incident of this in one region would be problem enough, but now it's starting to happen everywhere at once. All the mechanisms the immune system has evolved to handle infections work against you, and the virus continues to spread and finally begins to infect more and more body cells while the body desperately struggles to stay alive. In a desperate last effort to turn the tide, the immune system launches a cytokine storm. A cytokine storm is an SOS signal that causes the immune system to launch all of its weapons, all at once, in a desperate kamikaze attack. This hurts the virus, but leaves behind tons of collateral damage, especially in the blood vessels. Paradoxically, the healthier the immune system, the more damage it can do to itself. More and more fluid leaves the bloodstream. Blood pours out of every opening of the body. You become seriously dehydrated. There's just not enough blood left to supply the organs with oxygen, and cells begin to die. If you reach this point, the chance of you dying is very high. Currently, 6 out of 10 infected die from Ebola. Wow. Okay, Ebola is nasty. So it's time to panic, right? No, not even close. The severity of Ebola gets papers sold and YouTube videos shared, so everybody is talking about Ebola. But currently, the only way to get infected by Ebola is to come into contact with the bodily fluids of a person who shows symptoms or from an infected bat. So, just don't do that. Ebola has killed 5,000 people since June 2014. The common flu kills up to 500,000 people each year. Malaria kills up to 1 million each year, 3,000 people every single day, 10 children since this video started. So, even if Ebola is terrible and scary, don't let yourself be scared. The most infectious thing about Ebola is the media hype around it. You could learn a bit more about the immune system, though. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about measles. What does measles actually do, and should you vaccinate against it, or is this just hysteria? Measles is a virus, a hull of proteins, RNA, plus some more proteins for reproduction. It cannot reproduce by itself, it needs a host cell to do so. To understand measles, we have to understand the immune system. You might already have seen the visual system we developed to help here. Now, let's focus on the parts of the immune system relevant to measles. The measles virus enters humans through the nose, mouth, or eyes. The measles infection starts in the lungs. Measles is especially good at infecting the body's first line of defense, macrophages, powerful guard cells that protect the lungs from intruders. They enter a cell and take it over. The virus reprograms the cell and transforms it into a dangerous virus production center. Once a cell is filled with viruses, they leave the crippled cell and begin the cycle over again. But the immune system has powerful weapons against virus infections, natural killer cells. These cells basically patrol the body and check other cells for infections. If they find an infected cell, they order it to commit suicide. This is so effective that for the first 10 days or so, you will not even notice that you're infected with measles. And now, the reason why measles is so powerful. After a period of fighting and dying, macrophages alert the brain of the immune system, the dendritic cells. The job of the dendritic cells is to collect samples of intruders, travel to the lymph nodes, and then activate the heavy weapons that eradicate the infection very fast in a team effort. But the measles virus uses a dreadful tactic. It infects the dendritic cells and uses them as a Trojan horse to enter deeper into the body. The infected cells travel to the next lymph node to alert other immune cells. Once it arrives, the measles virus spreads around the virgin T and B cells and infects them. It attacks the very system that evolved to fight it. Now, things happen very fast. The lymph system spreads the virus everywhere and it enters the bloodstream, infecting cells while traveling. Measles infects organs like the spleen, the liver, the intestines, and most importantly, the lungs. The symptoms range from a very high fever, headache, sickness, bronchitis, and of course, a rash. In the lungs, the immune system was doing pretty okay, but now millions of viruses attack a second time and kill countless cells, wiping out the defense systems. In this phase, you start coughing out millions of measles viruses. Measles is so contagious at this stage that if you meet someone who isn't vaccinated, there's about a 90% chance you'll infect them. Without the protective army in the lungs, other bacteria or viruses that would usually not stand a chance can now enter the lungs and develop into harmful parallel infections that can cause pneumonia, the most common way to die from measles. Your body's immune system is now seriously wounded. Various protective systems are hurt and disrupted. The virus spreads everywhere, infecting the skin all over the body. The typical measles rash now becomes visible. And in some cases, the measles virus reaches the brain and causes a brain infection. If it does so, the chances of dying are between 20 to 40%, and there may be long-term damage. But your body is far from giving up at this stage, and it fights back aggressively. Some dendritic cells survive long enough to activate the antivirus forces of the body. Plasma cells in the lymph nodes start producing billions of antibodies, tiny proteins that mark infected cells for destruction or clump the virus together. Killer T cells flood the body and kill infected cells left and right. After 2 to 3 weeks, the body usually gets the upper hand and overwhelms the infection. But the immune system is now seriously weakened and may take weeks or months to recover, leaving the body vulnerable to other diseases. But if you make it, you are now immune. The immune system remembers the virus forever. Measles is no joke. Although 84% of all humans are vaccinated against measles, 122,000 people died because of the infection in 2014. Some people cannot get vaccinations, either because they're too young, because of chemotherapy or HIV, or because they're allergic to the vaccine. They need the rest of us to stop the disease for them. The measles vaccination is safe, cheap, and available. There are no benefits from having measles at all. You don't strengthen your immune system.